Ashley Papagna, the City of Orlando Public Information Officer. We want to thank the members of the media here today. We appreciate your continued role in sharing information on June 12th Remembrance events and the future of the Post Memorial with our community. During today's event, you will hear from Dr. Dyer, Dr. Larry Schooler, and Joaquin Guerra. For our Spanish-speaking audience, simultaneous interpretation will be available in both English and Spanish on our City of Orlando YouTube page. The link will also be available for download following this briefing. Now, during the speaking portion, we will open the floor for question and answer. You can request when answering your questions, you state your name and your media affiliation for clarity. You will also ask questions in Spanish, and when we answer in Spanish, we ask that you repeat it in English for those in the room. Again, questions and answers will be directly interpreted in Spanish in real time during our live feed. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our speakers. We have Dyer, Dr. Larry Schooler, spelled S-C-H-O-O-L-E-R, and Joaquin Guerra, spelled J-O-A-Q-U-I-N-G-U-E-R-A. He is part of Dr. Schooler's team, and he's joining us here virtually. So, thank you once again for your attendance. Without further ado, Mayor Dyer.
Thank you, Ashley, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I want to thank Commissioner Sheehan for being here and for her support and leadership through these past 8 years. It's hard to believe it's been 8 years since the Pulse tragedy, but it has been. And as the days and weeks and months following the tragedy, our city came together to show the world that we were Orlando United. And nearly 8 years later, I invite our entire community to once again join us in reigniting that collective spirit to honor and remember the 49 lives taken, to send love and support to the families and survivors and all those impacted, and of course to showcase Orlando's compassion and unity. Over the next few days, our community will come together during remembrance events, including 3 that are now in the City of Orlando, and I hope the residents will be able to join us. The first event is the Community Rainbow Run, which is bright and early tomorrow morning. The run epitomizes how in 2016 our community united to honor the 49 and display our commitment to inclusion. This event was started by UCF graduate students at the 1-year mark of the tragedy. They believed that a run could play a role in continuing to bring our community together. And they wanted to help with the healing process, recognizing that running and walking and spending time with others in a supportive environment can have a very positive impact. So net proceeds from the run will go towards the creation of a permanent memorial, and residents can still register for the run. The Remembrance ceremony will be held at Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts on Wednesday evening. The event is free, but tickets must be reserved in advance. The ceremony will be preceded by the ringing of the 49 bells at the First United Methodist Church. I encourage every person interested in participating in the run or attending the events on Wednesday to visit pulseorlando.org, pulseorlando.org for more information. I want to remind everyone that the tragedy disproportionately impacted the LGBTQ plus community, the Latinx, immigrant, Black, and other communities of color. By coming together at remembrance events, our community stands with those that were impacted. We also reaffirm our commitment to making Orlando a welcoming place for all. And certainly today, in a country and a world that seems so divisive, we ensure that in Orlando, love and optimism will always be more powerful than hatred and fear. It is critically important now to recognize the next few days will be incredibly difficult for many in our community and beyond. So to those directly impacted by the tragedies, we want you to know that Orlando United Resiliency Services, a program that is managed by the Center Orlando, continues to offer assistance to survivors and families. Experts in trauma recovery can be reached by visiting thecenterorlando.org. It's thecenterorlando.org. As we look forward to the future, one of the ways that we can honor the 49 each and every day is by creating a permanent memorial. It is my hope that together we can create a place that is some place that you can go to reflect, where those impacted by the tragedy in our entire community can be remembered. At the forefront of the city's efforts to ensure that the creation of a memorial is hearing from families of the 49 and survivors. We're partnering with Dr. Larry Schooler to engage and communicate with those directly impacted. Over the last few weeks, multiple opportunities were offered for families and survivors to give input both in person and virtually. Dr. Schooler is here today to provide an update on this initial outreach as well as to share what's next. Dr. Schooler.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Alongside my colleague Joaquin Gala, we have spent the last 2 months talking with approximately 45 family members and survivors, along with other community stakeholders, about how to structure this process in a way that feels inclusive, accessible, and transparent. So we're announcing today the creation of the Pulse Memorial Advisory Committee. We believe that this committee will allow a broad cross-section of family members, survivors, and other stakeholders, as well as first responders, healthcare professionals, community leaders, and those with technical expertise in design and engineering, like landscape architects, to help co-create a detailed design for the memorial with significant input from families, survivors, and the public at every step. We anticipate a committee of approximately 10 to 15 members to ensure that we include a multitude of perspectives. We are very much hoping to find a number of family members to be part of this committee, as well as survivors. We believe that their participation is crucial to this endeavor. We also hope to find others directly impacted by the Pulse tragedy, such as first responders and former Pulse employees and the like. There is now an application that's live for the committee, and it's available, as the mayor said, at pulseorlando.org, pulseorlando.org. There is an English version and a Spanish version. And we can also assist any family members and survivors with the application. Anyone can serve on this committee. We only want to make sure that they will not be involved in any contract for the construction of the memorial. The application will be available for the next 2 weeks from today until June 23rd. Any mailed applications would just need to be postmarked by June 21st. Again, the application is available in both English and Spanish. To ensure a thorough and thoughtful review of the applications, we will ask 3 to 4 members of the Orlando community to serve as advisors during the application process. These members have been part of organizations that have been directly serving the Pulse community. These individuals will be chosen based on their familiarity with the community and their connections to Pulse, and they will not serve on the committee itself. Those individuals will meet at the end of June to review applications with names and other personal identifying information redacted, and they will provide recommendations to Mayor Dyer, who will make the final appointments. We plan to announce the committee appointments in early July, and we're hoping to convene the committee for its first meeting the week of July 22nd. We're asking committee members to commit to a monthly meeting for the remainder of this year, and we anticipate a 2-evening session each month to allow us to get the most done, again starting in July, the week of July 22nd. The committee's meetings will be available to the public to attend either virtually or in person, and for committee members and the public to participate in English or Spanish. In addition to the committee's work, families, survivors, and the broader community will have multiple opportunities over the next 6 months to provide input, beginning this summer and continuing through the end of this year. We anticipate holding public input sessions concurrently with the committee meetings, along with a virtual space online for feedback and a dedicated telephone number for those wishing to communicate that way. More information on future opportunities to participate will be available at pulseorlando.org. Above all else, we want to ensure that this process remains accessible, inclusive, and transparent. Everyone, who wants to provide input on the memorial will have the opportunity to provide feedback, from attending committee and public meetings to surveys and other interactive discussions in both English and Spanish. Anyone who wants to engage can do so, either in the Orlando area or virtually, either in English or in Spanish. And we will continue to update the pulseorlando.org website with updates on the committee's planned meeting agendas, minutes from their meetings, proposed recommendations, and opportunities for public input. In order to ensure that this is a culturally competent process, I'm very pleased to be teamed with Joaquin Dyer, who is joining us now live virtually to provide a brief introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. I'll repeat this in Spanish, but my name is Joaquin Guerra, and I'm working with Dr. Stewart to support bilingual outreach and engagement with the Spanish-speaking community. I'm a partner at Conexión Public Engagement, where we connect strategic communication with the public. Throughout our process, we are focused on centering victims and survivors in two focus groups, two held virtually and two held in person in Orlando. We must understand the wishes of the victims' families, the survivors, and the community members, so that the leadership of the City of Orlando and the advisory committee can act on these wishes. One thing has been one point was made exceptionally clear throughout the four focus groups, is that the families, the survivors and community members would like for the memorial to be completed as soon as possible, so that they can honor their loved ones properly and continue their own healing process. Lo voy a repetir en español. Mi nombre es Joaquín Guerra, estoy trabajando con el doctor Schultz para apoyar la conexión en este proceso con la comunidad hispana. Soy socio de la empresa Conexión Public Engagement, donde conectamos la comunicación con el público. A lo largo de nuestro proceso nos hemos centrado en poner a las víctimas y sobrevivientes en el centro de 4 grupos focales, 2 realizados por el grupo y 2 en Orlando. Es clave que necesitamos entender los deseos de las familias de las víctimas, los sobrevivientes de la comunidad, participantes de la ciudad de Orlando y los comités asesores pueden actuar en esos deseos. Los participantes en los grupos focales han dejado claro que su máxima prioridad es visitar la comunidad lo más pronto posible para poder honrar a sus seres queridos, a los herederos también reciben. Gracias.
As they continue to heal. Thank you.
Okay, we will take questions if they're directed to me or to Dr. Stewart, Joaquin. Well, we've had discussions about how we might fund it. Obviously, there is no money that was set aside. There was no money left over from the One Pulse organization to go towards this. So we're looking at cost estimates for what it may cost. But part of the thing is we want the group to decide whether we're going to demolish the building or whether the building in some fashion is going to be part of the memorial. So there's not any physical work that we can do to the property until we've made those decisions. So we really wanted to take a pause and get input because we wanted to be transparent and make sure that everybody that wants to participate has that opportunity to participate.
thanks, Ashlyn, for the question. I think that it will not surprise anybody to learn that the people that I spoke with are hurting. Time doesn't heal all wounds, especially in the case of losing a loved one or even experiencing trauma as a survivor. And so that came through very clearly as a raw emotion that didn't take any prompting to bring up. I think that importantly, though, as it relates to the co-creation of a memorial, people want to have a voice, they want to feel heard, they want to know that the memorial will be designed in a thoughtful way that reflects not only their aesthetic tastes, but also what they think would properly recognize the uniqueness of the person they're trying to honor, whether it be a family member or a survivor. And so I think that they, on the one hand, are anxious to get underway, but on the other hand, they want to make sure that anyone looking to contribute to this has a chance to do so. And given what the mayor shared earlier about the extraordinary diversity of the population, that's something that will take time, and we're committed to taking the necessary time to do that.
And is there any takeaways right now about if the majority of survivors and families want the nightclub building to stand or demolished?
I wouldn't say there's any sort of clear consensus one way or the other on the building. I think, that's one of the things that the committee has to evaluate in a holistic way, and my hope is that at their first meeting they're not necessarily jumping right into that topic, but they're thinking about what are we trying to accomplish with this memorial, which will then help them to answer questions about the building.
Hello, Nancy Evans, Midwest 2 News, Mayor. My question is for you, and it's, I want to see if we can expand a little bit on the fundraising component of all of this, and it's twofold. The first part of this question is, hearing you say there's no money left. A lot of people gave a lot of money to One Pulse, and to hear you say that, it hurts. It hurts this community. I'd like for you to respond to that, and then also, if you could provide some specifics on where things stand today. We know there are some sponsors for the run. If you could talk about how much has come in already, how much you may think you need, any specifics that you can provide to us on the fundraising.
Okay. So I wish that One Pulse would have been successful. The city at the onset was willing to take on this process, and then the One Pulse organization was created. I think they became overly ambitious in terms of the museum being a concept as well as the memorial. I want to be clear that we are focused on the memorial. The museum is no longer in play. However, since we were not envisioning that this would ever be our tour or our task to take on, we have not budgeted money other than the $2 million that we paid for the site itself. So we envision that there will be a combination of funds that are raised and probably some additional public funding, primarily probably from the city of Orlando, I would guess, but we'll invite other governments if they so choose to participate with us. We're not going to turn down anybody's money, but it's hard for us to go out and ask for private donations until we've come up conceptually with what it is that we're going to build there so we can show people. And of course, we raised $34 million at the very beginning of this that we distributed 100% to the families and to the survivors. So we're in essence coming back for, I guess if you want to take One Pulse, a third dip into that pool of people that want to support us there. So I'm not going to suggest it's going to be easy to go out and fundraise this third time.
Good afternoon, Laverne McGee, Reporter News 6. Mayor, this tragedy obviously changed Orlando. Would you say that we're a safer city more now than we were before this happened?
It's hard to equate it on the safety side of things. What I would say is we're a more unified city. We're a more compassionate city. We care about each other. At the time we said that we would be defined by our response rather than the demented act of a killer, and I think Orlando has responded in that fashion. As you look around the country, we're not so accepting these days as Americans, but here in Orlando we embrace all newcomers. We embrace every race, every ethnicity. We believe people should be free to live as their authentic selves, so we'll continue to promote that. In terms of pure crime statistics, crime is down year over year and the year before that as well. So in the sense of, is there less crime? Yes, there's less crime, but is it because of Pulse? I can't say that, but how we have responded as a city was directly related to Pulse.
I have a question for Patty. Well, Patty, we were there.
Yeah.
What's all this?
I'm disappointed that One Pulse was not successful and basically raised a lot of money that didn't go anywhere and did not benefit the people it meant to benefit. I think it's important for us to say that the city was responsible when we did the direct assistance to $34 million. Also, we work with our federal partners to make sure that money was tax-free to the families and the survivors. And we structured that during a committee process, and it was a very public process, as a lot of you remember. So we have a track record of success with that. The difficulty is, there was millions of dollars, and we don't even know how much. To be quite honest, I am frustrated as a member of the LGBTQ plus community that I don't even know how much money was given to this organization and what they did with it. It's frustrating to me, and I understand that it's frustrating for a lot of people in this community. But we can't fix what happened before. We have to move forward. And this is the process of moving forward.
And that's really at the heart of my question, Patty, that your thoughts on moving forward, finally, 8 years later.
Yeah. I'm getting some mixed responses. They're like, why are you moving so quickly? Why aren't you being faster? I think there's going to be criticism either way. It's been 8 years. Why haven't you done something? Why are you moving so quickly? But I think that the thing that we really need to do is move forward in a thoughtful fashion. I think with Dr. Schooler, we're doing that. We also have to get support of the City Council for additional funding, which isn't always easy. As a City Council member, everybody wants, money to go to their district. So it's going to be a process. But I do feel that this is very important to this community. I think that having that building rotting there with what was supposed to be a temporary memorial, which was only supposed to be up for 2 years, it doesn't look that great because it was supposed to be a temporary thing. It wasn't supposed to be there for this long. So I think we need to move forward in a thoughtful way, but I would like to see something done in a quick fashion just because it's been a long time. And I'm really hoping we can get something done before the 10-year mark. Again, it's not an anniversary. This is not something that we celebrate. It's something that we commemorate.
I'm sorry, can I ask you one more question, Patty? From your heart. From your heart.
I'm heartbroken that we were taken advantage of. I really feel that the LGBTQ community, the victims and survivors, were taken advantage of. And now we have to fix it. And that's really hard because we're going out and going to try to raise money. We're going to try to do all these things after we've been taken advantage of. But it's not the first time this has happened. Every time there's a mass shooting or there's a massacre, there are always people that take advantage of people. They don't get the money to the victims. They don't get the money to the survivors. So that's why we structured the one fund in the very beginning the way that we did, so that this wouldn't be done this way. And that's what I'm telling people now. We're going to structure this the same way to make sure this gets to the right place. We're not going to be hiding anything. We're not responsible for what One Pulse did. We're not. The City of Orlando and One Pulse are two completely separate things. And I think that's where there's a disconnect. People don't understand that. Because the names are kind of similar. There was the Orlando United Fund and there was the One Pulse Foundation. But I want to be clear that this is a new day, that we're going to do the right thing. We're going to be transparent as we have throughout this entire process. And we were able to raise $34 million because we did it the right way, because we were transparent. And I have to tell you, I was surprised within 24 hours of this happening that we had over $1 million raised. I was stunned. But I also said at the same time, I was calling Equality Florida, who was doing fundraising as well, who was a great partner with us to make sure all that money, and we made sure all that money went to the victims. So and survivors. And people forget that. If you lost someone, you got a $350 payment. If you were injured, you got from $300,000 down to $20,000. If you were in the club, you got $20,000 to help you with your counseling. If you need to move forward, for 8 years we have been funding Orlando United Resource Services. So again, we've made a commitment throughout this entire time to take care of everyone, and we're going to continue to do that, but we're going to do this right. And again, it's hard to do when someone else screwed it up, I'm going to be honest. But it's not an impossible task because I know this community, I know the people in this community. When I was on that street, I saw more love and support and decency and goodness than I've ever seen in my whole life. It was the worst time in my life. But I saw more beauty in this city than I've ever seen in my whole life. So I know that that is still there, and I know we can make this happen.
Dr. Schooler, this is Brian Gillespie at the Orlando Sentinel. Since April, I know you said you've spoken to roughly 45 survivors and family members. I'm curious, is that a level of buy-in that you expected to this point, and what kind of outreach are you doing from here to grow that number?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan, for the question. You know, something like 115 people responded to the initial request that we made in early April to express interest in being part of this process. And the thing that's most important to me is that people will get repeated opportunities to be heard, even if they don't feel comfortable or ready to take advantage of the first opportunity. And I think this opportunity, this phase of the process, might have been a little hard for people to understand because it really was an assessment for me and my team to understand how best to serve the needs of this process. And so for some people that's, you know, a little bit down in the weeds. That's not as significant as show me a picture of what the memorial might look like and let me respond to that. So I'm very gratified that so many people were interested at this early juncture in helping make sure that this process is done in a sensitive fashion. And my hope is that going forward, people will jump into this conversation once, twice, or multiple times when they're ready, when they feel comfortable doing so, and that they don't feel coerced, they don't feel rushed. They just take advantage of the opportunity when the time feels right to them. Hope that answers your question.
And then one for Mayor Dyer as well. I know that it's kind of impossible at this point to ask people for money without knowing what this memorial is going to look like, but do you expect there to be a lot of interest from companies and corporations in private America to donate to this?
I hope that there is, and I assume that there is, but I will not assume that we're able to raise the entire amount from private interest. Again, we've been to that well twice, once for $34 million, and then as Commissioner Sheehan said, the second time One Pulse went, I don't know how much they raised from the community, so we're coming back a third time asking for money from people that have already contributed, so that gets a little bit tougher the next time around.
Ryan Lynch, Orlando Business Journal. This might be for either Mayor Dyer or Dr. Schooler, but just in terms of once you guys have held all these meetings for the task force getting into next year, what do some of those actionable steps look like? Do you guys bring these findings to City Council, or what other steps might come after that?
What I'm hoping the final product is a conceptual design that we can take and then figure out how to have it do 100% design drawings and to how to construct it. So that would, yes, have to come back to City Council at some point. And as Dr. Schooler said, I'm hopeful that that process will be forthcoming before the end of this calendar year. Dr. Schooler, you want to?
Yeah, Ryan, just to add to that, I mean, this is a committee giving advice to the mayor and the commission, and so we hope that they will deliberate on all aspects of how the memorial should look and then present the mayor and commission with what they believe is a consensus, which they all feel they can support. They may not all get their absolute top perfect design, but we hope that they'll find something with which they can live and then hand that to the mayor and commission. And then hopefully the mayor and commission will be in a position to find ways to make that a reality.
I have a question for Dr. Schooler. Again, this is Celeste Springer with Spectrum News. With this 10 to 15 member committee, how are you guys going to be working to ensure that all of the people who are not able to be on this committee still have the ability to provide input?
Yeah, it's a really important question because I have worked in the public engagement field now for about 15 years, and I've always worked by the mantra that those affected by a decision need to be able to affect that decision. And in this case, we're talking about thousands, if not millions of people that are affected by the eventual outcome here. So in order to enable everybody to participate, we're going to have to provide a mix of methods to receive people's input. So even if someone can't come to a meeting virtually in real time, we want them to be able to either communicate with us one-on-one. That's part of why Joaquin and I are here, is to have these individual conversations. They can avoid talking to us but leave us a message. They can contribute an email to us. They can eventually, on the pulseorlando.org site, express their preferences in an anonymized way, or they could join meetings either in person or virtually. So it's just critical that we remove any obstacles and barriers to participation in order for this process to be done right, and that includes language access, which we intend to ensure all across. Sure.
Hello, my name is Roxana de la Riva. I am reporter of the Spanish newspaper La Prensa.
Mucho gusto.
I have a question. What expertise does Dr. Schooler possess regarding the ideology and customs of Hispanic and Puerto Rican victims, particularly in relation to his role as the leader facilitator on projects similar to the Orlando United Pulse Memorial Effort? And yes.
Yeah, Mrs. Casas, thank you for the question. So part of the reason that we took the 2 months that we've taken since you first heard me introduce myself is for me to get familiar with some of the specific customs and the specific cultural mores, if you will, that are important to the Puerto Rican community, but also to other nationalities, because sadly the Pulse affected a wide array of nationalities, including the Mexican population, including, I believe, Colombian and Venezuelan. But Puerto Rican is certainly the most predominant, and we've had multiple conversations with people who live in Puerto Rico, and I know that some of those conversations are actually going to yield programming on Wednesday night that is more customized and reflective of Puerto Rican and Latino culture. So we're trying from the commemoration forward to be more sensitive to that. Joaquin is still with us, I think, and might have some other points to make just about some of the takeaways we have in terms of ways to ensure this process is culturally appropriate. Your sound is, we can't hear you.
Sorry about that. That was on. Thank you, Dr. Schooler. I think that as it relates to the cultural competency, one, speaking in language, two, using that as a bridge to build relationships, to really listen to where the survivors, the victims' families, and the community is coming from, and then acting on them. You know, as I said in my statement a little while ago, it's important that we understand the wishes, and centering the victims and centering the survivors throughout this process is job one for me, to be that facilitator, that bridge, if you will, between the Puerto Rican and Spanish-speaking community that are engaging in this process, and also being an advocate for them also. I know what it's like to be on the other side of a table when you want to speak in Spanish, but you're unable to because the person doesn't have that capacity to. So those are the ways that we're approaching this in a culturally competent way.
I just want to make two other quick points, and then you can ask it in Spanish. Of course, yeah. Would you mind sharing at least a part of our answer in Spanish as well? Joaquin, would you mind answering in Spanish?
Sure, no problem. Lo que estamos haciendo es Yo estoy trabajando con el doctor
that I'm working
School
with Dr.
para hacer ese puente entre la comunidad hispana y los hispanohablantes. Y el doctor School está comenzando con este comité de asesor.
Starting with
Yo
advisor for this
sé
committee.
cómo se siente de
I
estar
was saying in
en una
English
mesa
how I know what it feels like to be at a table, at a meeting,
y que quiero hablar en
and that I
español.
want to speak in Spanish.
En la mesa no hablo en
I think the club has no one who speaks Spanish.
como no nomás un
So
facilitador,
I
pero
consider myself
como
not
una
just a
facilitador
facilitator,
y
but also
para
a
los
champion
sobrevivientes y la
for
comunidad hispana.
the victims and
Y por el
survivors
proceso que
and
el School
families
está
of this
diseñando.
tragedy.
Voy
The
a
committee that
contar con
Dr. Schuler is designing
con las familias, los
will be
sobrevivientes,
one that will be able to communicate with the families, with the survivors,
por todos los canales que tenemos para
through all the channels that we have of communication.
Just a couple of other things I wanted to add. One is, thank you for being here today, and I think it's very important that the media who can communicate to audiences in Spanish continue to be our partners as best as possible to make sure they understand how welcome they are as a part of this process. Secondly, I want to make sure everybody understands that we have excellent interpreters today who are assisting with this press conference. Joaquin is essentially my partner in this work. He's not just someone who is conducting sessions in a second language. He's here to function as a co-facilitator with his particular brand of expertise. And I also wanted to share something that was interesting to me in one of our focus groups, learning about certain rituals in the Puerto Rican community for mourning that are very different than what I am accustomed to, but are very meaningful to the Puerto Rican community. And I don't want to do them an injustice by trying to summarize them very quickly, but it's clear to me that as the memorial takes shape, we have to take into consideration that people grieve and mourn in very different ways, and we have to find ways to honor all of that. And of course, the victims in the press were also from the Black community. They were from a variety of different backgrounds, and we have to find ways to respect all of those.
Mayor, Michelle Meredith, Northwest 2 News. One thing that has really stood out is that everyone can contribute. Everyone. Public meetings, via email, why is that important?
We want everybody in this community, from the families of the victims to the survivors to those that simply lived here in Orlando at the time. Everybody was affected by what happened, and the world was focused on us. So we want to be as transparent as possible, and we would like every single person that wants to be involved to have that opportunity to be involved. Because there are people that weren't at Pulse, that had never been in Pulse, that were affected by what happened there that day. I've talked to people all over the country, quite honestly, that can tell me exactly where they were when they got up that morning and turned the TV on and learned about what had happened at the Pulse in Orlando.
Okay, we'll take one more question. Anyone? I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I would like to emphasize one thing that Dr. Schooler said. So this time of year, we're obviously focused on what happened 8 years ago. So as we're trying to do outreach, what you guys are doing in terms of reporting on this press conference and getting that message out to people that will be tuned in at least for the next 3 or 4 days is important to get everybody that wants to be involved. So I just want to thank you for your coverage. Thank you.